Welcome to Managing Nebraska's Public Roads and Streets Planning and Reporting, Standardized System of Annual Reporting, Rule and Regulation Title 428, Nebraska Administrative Code Chapter 4. This video focuses on how to complete forms required for the Standardized System of Annual Reporting, also known as SSAR, for submittals from counties and municipalities to the Nebraska Board of Public Roads Classifications and Standards. This is the 10th topic in a series of videos, the purpose of which is to summarize Nebraska's management of public roads and streets as directed by state law and also by rule and regulation. The target audience is county highway and city street superintendents and those aspiring to attain those positions. Elected officials and anyone interested in the management of the state's public roads and streets are also encouraged to view this. Before watching this video, it is important to view and understand the information presented in the following videos. Introduction to Nebraska's Highways, Roads, and Streets, the Big Picture. Classification and Standards, a series of 10 videos. It would be helpful to watch all of them with the possible exception of the video on the Americans with Disabilities Act. Also watch the video SSAR, an overview. SSAR is an acronym for the Standardized System of Annual Reporting of Key Information related to Nebraska's highway, road, and street programs. There are 4 parts to an SSAR submittal to the NBCS. A certification that State Statute Chapter 39-2120 was followed. A financial report of expenditures, revenues, and budget. A material and supply inventory report. A machinery and equipment report. The forms shown on this and the previous 3 screens are interim forms, preferred by the NBCS, but not mandatory until the rulemaking process and approvals occur. This screen shows a sample resolution of adoption by the governing body of a county 1- and 6-year plan. This screen shows part of the first page of a 2-page county certification form proposed by the NBCS. More details will be presented on this form later. There is a separate certification proposed for municipalities and a separate certification for the Nebraska Department of Transportation. This is 1 page of a current Form 1 Highway Budget and Expenditure Report from a county submitted to the NBCS in June of 2016. The submitted report is 8 pages long. This is a Form 2 financial report from a county submitted to the NBCS in June of 2016. The submitted report is 1 page long with 8 additional sheets attached. This screen shows the proposed Roads and Streets Financial Report Budget Revenue and Expenditures form. It is a 1-page form replacing current Forms 1 and 2. Future submittals will be significantly less in terms of what information is reported to the NBCS. Referring to financial information, the NBCS is not interested in receiving more than this 1-page form. However, the accounting and budgeting systems must be in place just the same, with all of the detailed financial data necessary to generate the required information for this form. This is 1 page of a Form 3 Material and Supply Inventory Report previously submitted to the NBCS. This submittal consisted of the form, which was 1 page in this case, and 3 attached sheets, 1 sheet each, for their 3 district shops. This is the proposed Material and Supply Inventory Report form, which the NBCS intends to use instead of the current Form 3, which could be several pages long. The new form is only 1 page because commodities are grouped. They are grouped according to the Nebraska Accounting Code Manual for counties. The numbers in the left column are codes from that manual. The NBCS is interested in receiving only a summary of inventory and therefore is not interested in receiving multiple pages of inventory details. However, the state statute does require each entity to have a system for tracking and reporting inventory and maintain detailed inventory information on file. This is 1 page of a Machinery and Equipment Inventory Report previously submitted to the NBCS. The document is 5 pages long. In this report, machinery is grouped according to pickups, large trucks such as boom trucks, dump trucks, cranes, and semi-trucks, skid steers and backhoes or loaders, motor graders, tractors, trailers, and miscellaneous equipment. This is one page of an equipment cost report previously submitted to the NBCS. This document was 4 pages long. This is the proposed machinery and equipment report form, which the NBCS intends to use instead of the current forms 4 and 5. The new form can be extended more than 1 page, and may be several pages, depending on the numbers of machinery and equipment. All equipment and machines used to construct and maintain streets and roads shall be reported on this form. There is less information to report on this form compared to the current forms 4 and 5. However, the state statute does require each entity to have a system for tracking and reporting the inventory of machinery and equipment and the cost of operating them, and to maintain detailed inventory information. Filling out the forms is easy. The real work is done before you start filling them out. That requires having systems in place: budgeting, accounting, inventory, asset management, and records management. You should scan and plan. If you are unfamiliar with a form, look it over, scan it, to see what information will be needed. Then plan what information needs to go on the form. Required for these forms will be financial and budgeting information, as well as physical inventories of supplies, materials, machinery, and equipment expended and used for highways, roads, and streets. Title 428, Chapter 4 has instructions for completing all forms for the SSAR. It can be found online at either of the 2 web addresses shown on this screen. A hard copy can be obtained from the Nebraska Department of Roads Liaison Services section. The proposed Title 428 Chapter 4 instructions can be found online at NDOT's website as shown on the screen. A hard copy can be obtained from the NDOT Liaison Services section. When submitting reports to the Board of Public Roads, this is the order of forms that the Board expects. The certification form should be on top. It is the only document that needs to be signed by the governing body. There is also an attestation signature. The following screens review the proposed forms in more detail. Instructions for completing the forms are in Section 4 of the proposed instruction manual. Section 4 is on pages 3 through 10 of the proposed instruction manual. The NDOT plans to have electronic forms available for these reports. They are considered unofficial and must be verified by the user before submitting reports to the NBCS. The following series of slides provides guidance for entries on the county certification form. This screen shows the upper part of the proposed form. Find the instructions in Section 4, Subsection 2 on pages 3 and 4 of the proposed instructions. At the top of the form, enter the name of the county and the beginning and ending dates of the reporting period. This example assumes the reporting period ends June 30, 2017. The template is a Microsoft Word file. The first 6 items, numbers 1 through 6 on the certification, are the requirements set forth in State Statute 39-2120. These include certifying that works and projects met standards or were granted a relaxation of standards by the NBCS, that funding was spent on roads and streets according to state statutes, that there are systems in place to track the use of that money, accounting, budgeting, inventory, cost of equipment operations, and 1- and 6-year plan submittals. Item 7 is an item that pertains only to counties. It is not included on the municipality certification form. Reporting contracts over $20,000 addresses State Statute 39-810. Any work or project that has at least one contract of over $20,000 must be reported to the NBCS. The current regulation has a separate form for this purpose. This example assumes there were projects finalized in 2016, that is, costs are final, approved by the county highway superintendent, and paid, involving contracts over $20,000. The box in Item 7 will be left unchecked for this example, and the county attaches a separate sheet showing the project information. See Instruction 4.01D on page 3 of the proposed instructions for adding a separate sheet. Item 8 is a statutory requirement to report local option sales and use taxes. All of the required information can be put into the proposed certification form. There is no need to attach a separate sheet as the current regulation requires. Enter the amount of revenues for the road or street program estimated for the next fiscal year, less any anticipated local option sales and use tax collections. The total estimated revenues for the next fiscal year must include the estimated cash balance and estimates of indirect benefits, such as donations and federal aid. Indirect benefits will be explained later when the proposed financial form is presented. Then complete A, B, and C as applicable. In A, if local option sales and use tax is collected, put the total amount estimated to be collected next fiscal year. In B, check the box if all or part of those collections are exempt from reporting. If all of these tax proceeds are dedicated to roads, leave the box unchecked. In the example shown on this screen, the county anticipates collecting $100,000 in local option sales and use tax the next fiscal year, and it is exempt from reporting because they have dedicated the funds to something other than roads. If the county does not collect sales or use tax on motor vehicles, trailers, or semi-trailers, simply enter the total estimated revenues and check the box in C. Item 9 certifies that the appointed highway superintendent or representative presented the SSAR to the county board and identifies the date that meeting occurred. If the highway superintendent presents the SSAR, the part after the comma can be lined through, or if you are working with an electronic file, it can be deleted. If someone other than the appointed superintendent presented the information to the county board, enter the name of that person in the space provided. Enter the address where documentation in support of the SSAR submittals is kept. At the bottom of the second page, add the governing body's seal, the signatures, and the date. That completes the county certification. All other forms being submitted should be attached with the certification on top. The first part of the municipality certification has the same 6 SSAR requirements as the county's. Other than that, municipalities have a few different legal requirements. First, municipalities are not required to submit a list of contracts greater than $20,000. Second, many municipalities do not have machinery or equipment to report. The county maintains streets in some municipalities. There are checkboxes on the certification to indicate these circumstances. Other than those requirements, the two certifications are the same. The following series of slides provide guidance for entries on the Roads and Streets Financial Report, Revenue and Expenditures form. The purpose of this report is to summarize actual expenditures and revenues for the reporting period, the middle column, compare them to what was estimated on last year's submittal to the NBCS, the left column, and to summarize the estimated budget and anticipated revenues for the next fiscal year, the right column. Beginning and ending cash balances are required. Section 4, subsection 3 is on pages 4 through 8 of the proposed instruction manual. Have these instructions available and refer to them as needed during the presentation. The financial report is filed annually with the NBCS. This is the interim one-page form. At the top, the cash balance at the beginning of the fiscal year is reported. In the third from the right column, the cash balance that was estimated at the beginning of the fiscal year to be on hand at the end of the fiscal year. In the second from the right column, the cash balance actually on hand at the end of the fiscal year. In the far right column, the cash balance estimated to be on hand at the end of the next fiscal year. The previous fiscal year's ending cash balance is typically this fiscal year's beginning cash balance. That is, the number in the estimated for this fiscal year cell is usually equal to the number in the actual for this fiscal year cell. The beginning cash balance is included in the total revenue figure further down in this section. If you use the spreadsheet, notice that the number entered in the first column automatically appears in the second column. On the rare occasion an error occurred and was noticed after the previous annual submittal to the NBCS, replace the number in the second column with the actual beginning cash balance. The interim form requires an explanation for the difference. The NBCS requires any revenue and expenditure numbers to be reported as described in the Nebraska Accounting Code Manual for counties. Municipalities do not be misled by the title. 428 NAC 4 requires the manual to also be applied to municipalities for the purposes of reporting to the NBCS. Since 1969, the NBCS has based the standardized system of reporting on this manual. That is expected to continue into the foreseeable future. Financial information required to be tracked will not change. The big change, if rulemaking is successful, is that the report to the NBCS would be a summary of financial information without the details currently required. The supporting information still needs to be tracked and kept on record by the local agency. Stop the video, get a copy of the Nebraska Accounting Code Manual for counties, review and refer to it for the remainder of this presentation, and have it handy whenever you complete the financial form. The revenue codes in the left column and the object of expenditure codes are defined in the Nebraska Accounting Code Manual for counties. Revenue codes are found in Chapter 4. Expenditure codes are found in Chapter 5. Enter the totals for local, state, and federal revenues generated in the fiscal year in the section below the cash balance information. Add the numbers in each column, including the cash balance. Do not enter indirect benefits in this section, only revenues that are included in the county's or municipality's budget. Indirect benefits will be addressed later in this presentation. If you are using the spreadsheet, numbers in the bottom line, total revenue, are calculated automatically. The formula totals the beginning cash balance and the local, state, and federal revenues. The workbook includes a revenue worksheet with a breakdown of revenue codes according to the Nebraska Accounting Code Manual for counties. Likewise, there is also an expenditures worksheet with a breakdown of expenditure codes. These worksheets automatically populate the financial report worksheet with its numbers. It is not required to use them. They are meant to help get the revenues into the correct accounting codes as a convenience to users. Do not submit the revenue and expenditures worksheets to the NBCS. The NBCS only wants to receive the one-page form, whether it is completed manually, with the provided spreadsheet, or by some other means. The revenue and expenditure worksheets include chapter, section, and page references to the Nebraska Accounting Code Manual for counties. The codes and many definitions can be found quickly in the manual using these references. Section 4, subsection 3 also has information on several items. Complete the revenues and expenditures parts of the report. If you are using the spreadsheet, numbers in the bottom line, total expenditures, are calculated automatically, similar to the total revenue numbers. Enter the ending cash balances. If you are using the spreadsheet, these numbers are calculated automatically by subtracting the total expenditures from the total revenue. Enter any indirect benefits. These are funds applied for the benefit of the county or municipality, but not included in the annual budget. An example is a local agency with a federal aid project let through the NDOT. If federal funds are provided by the state on behalf of the federal government directly to parties other than the county or municipality, such as consultants or contractors, these funds are not accounted for in the local agency's annual budget. By law, such funds must be disclosed to the public on the annual report to the NBCS. Donations of land is a common benefit. The monetary value must be reported. Roads and streets constructed by developers is another common arrangement, the cost of which does not always appear in the local agency's budget. The monetary value must be reported. There are a multitude of situations like these that are required by law to be reported. Counties and municipalities are required to match received highway allocation funds. Counties, cities of the first class, cities of the second class, and villages are required to match the second half of the monthly distributions it received, $1 for each $2 received. This is the equivalent of 25% for the full year of allocations. The cities of Lincoln and Omaha must match the second 1/3 of their monthly distributions, $1 for each $1 received, and the final 1/3, $1 for each $2 received. This is the equivalent of 50% for a full year of allocations. Matching funds can be money from any source other than the Highway Allocation Fund itself. State aid bridge funds come out of the Highway Allocation Fund. Incentive payments for having a licensed superintendent come off the top of the Highway Allocation Fund and do not need to be matched. On the first line, enter the Highway Allocation Funds received during the fiscal year and required by law to be matched. When using the spreadsheet, if the amount of Highway Allocation Funds are entered on the Revenue Worksheet, item 347.01 under State Revenue Sources, the worksheet will automatically copy the number onto the Financial Worksheet. This assumes that any relinquished funds or any other Highway Allocation Fund money that is required to be matched is also entered into the Revenue Worksheet under item 347.01. For manual entry, darken the radio button for the type of entity and enter either 25% or 50% as appropriate for the entity. Enter the minimum required matching funds. This must be figured according to state statutes. Enter the amount of matching funds provided during the fiscal year by the local agency. Finally, calculate the percentage of matching funds provided during the fiscal year. Divide the matching funds provided by the Highway Allocation Funds received during the fiscal year and required to be matched. The Financial Report Worksheet addresses the simple case in which an entity receives a full year's allocation. Click one of the two radio buttons as appropriate for the type of entity. The worksheet figures either a 25% match or a 50% match, depending on the type of entity. Only Lincoln and Omaha, for the foreseeable future, will have the 50% requirement. All others have the minimum 25% requirement. The worksheet automatically calculates the minimum required matching funds based on the assumption that the entity received its full allocation during the fiscal year. Usually this means the entity did not forfeit any of its allocation or were not penalized by the NBCS. Enter on the worksheet the amount of matching funds actually provided during the fiscal year. The worksheet automatically calculates matching funds actually provided as a percentage of Highway Allocation Funds received during the fiscal year. For situations more complicated than the normal full year of allocations, or the typical case of a municipality relinquishing its Highway Allocation Funds to the county, attach an additional sheet to explain and show how state law was met. Finally, at the bottom of the form, indicate the date that the governing body met and accepted the financial report. The following slides provide guidance for entries on the Material Supply and Inventory form. For instructions, see Section 4, Subsection 4 on pages 8 and 9 of the proposed instruction manual. This form has all of the categories of materials and supplies that the NBCS requires to be reported. If a material, supply, or office-type furniture and equipment does not fit into one of the descriptive categories listed on the form, it can be added into the appropriate miscellaneous category. The NBCS intends this to be only a one-page form. Large machinery and equipment are to be reported on the Machinery and Equipment Report. Examples are cars, trucks, pickups, motor graders, loaders, mowers, and road surfacing equipment. Do not include the dollar value of these items on this report. Together, the two forms, Material Supply and Inventory and Machinery and Equipment, must account for all materials, supplies, machinery, and equipment dedicated or used for roads and streets purposes. Tracking quantities of inventory is good management and essential for the road or street department's operation. For reporting purposes, it is required to estimate the total dollar values for each category. The categories on the Material and Supply Inventory form are from the Nebraska Accounting Code Manual for Counties, Chapter 3, Section B, Expenditure Object Codes for Supplies and Materials. The manual can be found online on the Auditor of Public Accounts website. For the Material and Supply Inventory Report, begin by entering the name of your county or municipality and the inventory date or the date the report is completed. Enter the dollar value for each category of materials and supplies listed on the form. For materials and supplies that don't fit into any of the listed categories, enter their total dollar value as appropriate in one of the 3 rows provided above each thick black line on the form. In the example shown on the screen, there are $2,500 of other supplies that did not fit into any of the individual supplies categories, so that amount is included on the miscellaneous supplies line. It is the same principle for the materials category and the furniture and office equipment category. When using the spreadsheet, notice that as you enter numbers, the total at the bottom changes automatically. Continue entering values until accounting for all materials, supplies, furniture, and office equipment on hand. This is a one-page form. The NBCS prefers to receive only one page. That is, don't attach anything to this. If the NBCS wants more details, they will ask. Pay no attention to the validity of amounts in this example. This is for demonstration purposes only. This form does not need to be signed. It is attached to the certification form, which is signed by the appointed superintendent. The following slides provide guidance for entries on the machinery and supply inventory form. For instructions, see Section 4, Subsection 5 on pages 9 and 10 of the proposed instruction manual. Unlike the other 2 proposed SSAR forms, which are only one page, the machinery and supply inventory form could be more than one page. It depends on the number of items to report. All equipment and machines used to construct and maintain streets and roads shall be reported on this form. Examples are cars, trucks, pickups, motor graders, loaders, mowers, and road surfacing equipment. Together, the 2 forms, machinery and equipment, and material supply and inventory, must account for all materials, supplies, office furniture and equipment, and all machinery and equipment dedicated or used for roads and streets purposes. For the machinery and equipment report, begin by entering the name of your county or municipality and the inventory date or the date the report is completed. Then make a line entry for each piece of machinery or equipment. If you are using the spreadsheet, enter the appropriate information in columns numbered 1 through 9, spreadsheet columns B through J. The 2 rightmost columns, the total cost of all items and the cost rate, are calculated automatically by built-in formulas in the spreadsheet. Instruction 4.05b requires grouping machinery and equipment to facilitate review, requiring similar machinery and equipment to be entered in consecutive rows, and within those broad groupings to be organized by type and by age or model year. For example, enter all of the small trucks or pickups first. This screen shows entry of the first piece of equipment. In the example shown on the screen, a 2004 4x4 Ford pickup is entered with the county's inventory number as RD00001. It was purchased July 1st, 2004 at a cost of $22,539. It was driven 1,908 miles during the 1-year reporting period, using $588.59 of fuel, with other costs totaling $970.93 because of new tires and other maintenance. Depreciation, figured on a 15-year life, is $1,502.60, figured from the purchase price of $22,539 divided by 15 years. The cost rate figures out to be $1.60 per mile. Dollar values are rounded to the nearest dollar. The column on the far right, the cost rate, which is the cost per hour or the cost per mile, is to the nearest cent. Continue entries until accounting for all equipment and machines used to construct and maintain streets and roads. This form does not need to be signed. It is attached to the certification form, which is signed by the appointed superintendent. It is the intent of the Nebraska Board of Public Roads Classifications and Standards to require complete and reasonably accurate submittals of information on the forms provided. By complete, the board's intent is to account for all revenues, expenditures, indirect benefits, materials, supplies, machinery, and equipment. By reasonably accurate in terms of dollars, the NBCS does not require down-to-the-penny accuracy, just that all of the numbers are there and that they make sense. A form cannot cover every possible situation. If additional space, beyond what is provided on the form, is needed to explain or clarify, attach a separate sheet or sheets. Be sure to include identifiers on each added sheet. See instruction 4.01D on page 3 of the proposed instructions. It is good to have identification in case sheets get separated. Relate the additional information back to the form or the section of the form to which it refers. If copies are made, usually it is done one-sided, and if anything is written on the reverse side, it gets missed. So do not write on the reverse side of any sheet, including the form itself. This is an example of what an attached sheet could look like. This was the 10th topic in a series of videos, the purpose of which is to summarize Nebraska's management of public roads and streets as directed by state law and also by rule and regulation. The focus of this video was how to complete forms required for the Standardized System of Annual Reporting, also known as SSAR, submittals from counties and municipalities to the NBCS. Although the forms presented in this video are proposed forms, they are preferred by the NBCS, which anticipates taking them through the rulemaking process and making them official.